again. I'm blue.
Yes, I'm blue. Yes,
I'm tortured with memories of you.
Memories.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lil Greenwood, Executive Director of University Libraries, and I'm pleased to welcome you to Marx Library, our main campus library. We are here today to dedicate this beautiful portrait of Lil Greenwood, who I'm going to talk about for just a few minutes, painted by Soynika Edwards-Bush several years ago. This portrait is part of our permanent collection here in Marx Library, and we're just pleased and honored to have it because it recognizes two great artists, Lil Greenwood and Soynika Edwards-Bush, who's also going to speak with us today, both of whom were born in Pritchard, Alabama. So tomorrow will be Lil Greenwood's 100th birthday. As I said, she was born in Pritchard to Sylvester and Maggie Love George on November 18th, 1923, though you'll often see her birth year given as 1924. But more importantly, on her headstone it says 1923, so we're going with that. She grew up singing in her father's church. He was a Baptist minister in Pritchard. And then she began performing in Pritchard area clubs, not with the support of her father, but I gather that she continued to do so. Then she went to Alabama State College, now Alabama State University, and subsequent to leaving there, she taught in Pritchard at the Josephine Allen Institute, which is a very well-known and renowned school here in Mobile County. In 1947, she made her way to New York City, and she entered an amateur night at the in Harlem at the Apollo Club, the very famous Apollo Club, and she won. She came back to Mobile in the Pritchard area, and with the financial assistance of her school principal and some others within the school and perhaps others in the community, she put money together and took a bus to San Francisco, California. Living there, she performed in various clubs as a solo act. And she began touring with Roy Milton and his Solid Cinders, a band or an orchestra. In 1950, she began her first efforts at recording, and she recorded as a soloist. In 1956, on the advice of an agent who had noticed Lil Greenwood's performance capabilities, this agent encouraged Duke Ellington to go and see her at the Purple Onion Club, which is where she typically performed in San Francisco. And he was very, very impressed and asked her to join his orchestra. And she performed with Duke Ellington's orchestra, touring coast to coast until his death in 1974. Subsequently, his son led the Duke Ellington Orchestra for some years, and she continued to work with them. In the 1970s, she worked occasionally with Ray Charles as one of his Rayettes, the backup singers accompanying Ray Charles. And then she began to work in television. And those of you who lived through the 70s or who binge watch today may recognize some of these shows. The Jeffersons, the Flip Wilson Show, these were huge, huge hits in the 70s. Good Times, and she also appeared several times on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show when he was the host of that for so many years. In 1986, I understand that she returned to Mobile, and in 2003, she began to get more and more local recognition. The governor of Alabama established a day for her in 2003 called Lil Greenwood Day across the state. She was, during that time in the 2000s, inducted into the Gulf Coast Ethnic and Heritage Jazz Festival Hall of Fame. That festival continues on every summer here in Mobile. Lil Greenwood suffered a stroke in 2010, and from that time on was unable to perform. Though there are a number of recordings, including a wonderful series of YouTube videos that Soynika had put together several years ago, many of them done locally. where she's in a club with just a single accompanist. But it's a wonderful review of her work in very personal settings. She'll often tell stories about, Duke Ellington calling her at 4 in the morning when she was asleep in her home in California and saying, "Where are you? Are you on a plane?" And she'd say, "No, I was asleep." I'd say, "Well, go to Chicago, get on a plane, go to Chicago." And she'd get there and, he would be in New York and he'd say, "Come to New York, come to my apartment." And then she would go there and he'd say, "You have to go to the studio and record this song," that she'd never even performed before, a newly written song that was based on some of her work. So she did continue to record during those times, but I love the local things that you put together where she's performing, just herself and telling stories about her life as a performer. She died in 2011, and she's buried in the Catholic Cemetery in Mobile County, and her headstone reads, "The American Jazz Legend." So she certainly was. And so we're dedicating this portrait today, as I said. And I'd like to ask in a moment another legend from Alabama and Pritchard, Soynika Edwards-Bush, who's been one of our partners with our Jaws Fest and many other efforts in our galleries for several years. Soynika was born in Pritchard, which seems to inspire artists, and birth artists. She is the wife and mother of 4. I think one of whom is with her today, one of her daughters. She has an AA in Applied Science and Graphic Design from Faulkner State Community College, which offered her a scholarship to study with them, though she's a self-taught artist. Soynika did a Zoom talk for Paula Webb for USA Galleries in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic in the summer, because we couldn't host programs and so forth. Paula began to get area artists to agree to do Zoom talks, and many of us would join in and listen in. We have subsequently put many of those video recordings, including the one of Soynika, into our JAG Works at USA Institutional Repository, where they're freely available to anyone across the world. I think you got about 40 downloads of that as of today. Soynika in 2020 became the artist in residence at the Alabama Contemporary Arts Center, and in 2023 she had her first, I think, solo art show there. It was magnificent, filled with portraits of this caliber, many large canvases, very often based on family photographs and very often featuring you. There were also some 3-dimensional works. It was a church setting with, was it Mama or Grandma? Grandmama, with her purse, of course. And then the purse was there, the actual purse, and you could see what she had in it. What grandmamas have in their purse at church, candy and chewy and things like that. So it was just wonderful and personal. And I know we come around the corner where those church pews were, you can sort of have the shot. There's this lady in the church hats. In 2022, Soynika was named the Mobile Arts Council Visual Artist of the Year among her many awards, and I won't take your time listing them all because there are quite a few. In 2021, back to the USA Library's gallery, she partnered with us with our very first Jaws Fest, the Jazz Art Writers South Festival. That was launched from, I guess, just a mad thought on the head of Paula Webb, and then other people began to partner with us, including Soynika. Soynika actually was the organizer of the Working Boys and Girls Club of South Alabama, working with, I think, that year 4 different clubs. She would go in and inspire the children to paint, and they would listen to jazz as they painted. So we had jazz-inspired art from many students, and had an award ceremony here featuring the Excelsior Band, which is turning 140 this month, which is just wonderful. This portrait, as I said, is now part of our permanent collection. Hangs permanently in the atrium as long as any of us have something to say about what's out here. So, I want to say last of all, Soynika is really a community activist. Her heart and soul and her art are devoted to betterment of the community. And so I recognize you for that and for all the other recognition you received. And thank you so much for your partnership with us. You've just done wonderful things. We're so pleased to have you part of our family. So I'd like to ask Soynika to come and talk to us about Lil Greenwood, the portrait, and her work.
Thank you. I was having fun hiding behind that. Like, listen to all that. That was one of the things I've done over the years. Thank you so much to Paula and Miss Soynika at the Marx Library for asking me to do this portrait of Lil Greenwood. I like to believe in my heart that God had a lot to do with this. My baby daughter's name is Ellington. So we have that connection as well. But when I was doing this portrait, I had an artist block, like just out of nowhere. And I was starting on a painting and I was asking people, like the art people, like, I just can't get it. It's just not right. And I didn't feel it. I stopped painting for a week and I started to do research on Lil Greenwood. And I said I should do something more personal, but not just the more famous people that everyone knows. I want to do somebody that's personal, close to home, and of course she was from Pritchard. And I started to research her, and I know my family members know of her because they were all from Pritchard as well. My uncle was in a band, and my dad was a musician. And I would call and ask my uncle things about Lil Greenwood, and I started on that portrait, and it felt right. It felt like the artist block was gone. It felt right. I was supposed to do her. The other painting, of course, is tucked away in my studio, never to be seen by the public. Some people just want to go outside and just throw it off the balcony, but this one was more personal. This is what I was supposed to paint. And I'm praying that I did it justice. I'm praying her family is, they're pleased with the portrait. But just doing the research, I just never knew what we had here in Pritchard until you start reading and digging, but she's world known. And I'm just honored again that Ms. Paula and the library asked me to do this portrait. I'm honored that my children and hopefully my grandchildren will see this. Thank you again so much. So much. I just enjoyed doing this. I played her music while I was painting. I, never got a chance to meet her, but I know hopefully I did her justice, and her family and her fans will look at this portrait and see, and still feel the essence of who she was, who she is, and how important she is to the jazz world. So thank you again so much. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have questions for Soynika? Can you take Sure. When did you start?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with generic, like 5 years old. my first, but I think it was about 4 or 5. Every time I think back, my mom was a creative. She used to make our clothes when we were little. My grandmother, her mom made quilts. But on my dad's side, my dad was like a Renaissance man, made custom cabinets, not a day of training. He could do everything. And so I get it from him as well. So I got a double dose from my grandmother who was hands-on. And the figure that you speak of in the show, I made her. And that's a whole nother story, because I was just thinking about the memories of her quilts hanging from the ceiling, how we would run underneath the quilts, play, and you can see the needle coming through with her little thimble. But just all those memories started to come in as I was literally building my grandmama. So just thinking back, I had moments of creativity throughout my childhood, and just to have it all come full circle and create my grandmother from scraps of clothes, and that was just, I still can't wrap my head around that whole experience. That was an emotional experience. I had to take a break. I was like seconds away from calling. She passed away in, I forget the year, but I was seconds away from calling the funeral home because they had got that person. Just like, how did you prepare my grandma? Because I'm having a hard time. It was an artist. It was such a place of creating, and the memories and sadness and joy and just all these emotions wrapped around me, building this life-size figure of my grandma. And that was, so putting her on that church pew, she had to sit there, she had to be next to her purse, she had to have the lifesavers, which we ate every Sunday. So, when I was done. It felt like a relief that it was like we did the whole it was a mourning, but it was a celebration almost, because she was back but not back, and I got a chance to see a figure of her. So that was, and she had on, the night of the show, she had on her sister's shoes. My great aunt, I called and said, can I borrow a pair of shoes? So she actually had on her sister's shoes and her dress. She had on one of her original dresses and her hat and her sister's shoes. And her sister didn't even want to sit. My great aunt sat next to her and she couldn't want to look at her. But it was just, it was what I needed to do, because I put my everything into that show. That was everything that I had, I put into that show.
You do that with everything you do in life.
Yes.
Your art, your love for your family, your love.
I tell people, I understand when you see performers, how they collapse when they leave the stage. It's so true. Because you've given everything. You have given every ounce of you when you create. It's nothing left to give, so you're depleted. So I understand when artists go to the side of the stage or whatever and they're done. It's nothing else left to give.
I remember your opening night. You were initially in your paint-stained overalls, working guns, and then in a short while you appeared on the floor of the Contemporary Arts Center, which if you haven't been, it's the most avant-garde art center. It's just concrete floors and walls enhanced with this incredible show. And here comes Soynika in this incredible ball gown, just the proverbial big dress.
Oh, yeah. I felt like I needed the overalls to keep me grounded because I was just a nervous wreck. I mean, I wouldn't eat, I wouldn't drink. I was like, I didn't even want to talk. I was like, because the nerves were, because it was very vulnerable. At that moment, I was completely naked in front of everybody. It was all that I had. Years of doubt and, self-sabotage and, no's, yays, maybes, okays, all that just to culminate in one night for a few hours and people to come in and take a little piece and then leave. That was a lot. So yes, I did put on my emerald ball gown. And because I owed it to the people that I created to come out and celebrate me and them and all the Soynikas that live in me. So yeah, that emerald green ball gown is a hit.
We were in all of your show and your work and your soul and your dress.
Yeah. And it has pockets. I split their pockets. Yes. But I really appreciate just having this here. When things happen, they're God moments for me because my faith is what leads me. So just seeing this here, like I'm here today speaking, but it'll be like next week before I really process it that I have a painting here that my kids can come and see. And I had a classmate from elementary school took a picture with it. We had the last Jaws fest and he took a picture with it and he was like, you can paint, you were able to draw back to elementary school. And I'm like, yeah, I was. So just to see us as grown-ups and have him and his family come and take a picture next to it is, I take nothing for granted. I told my kids this, my students the other day, I take nothing for granted. Nothing for granted.
Other questions? Other accolades? We just really thank you so much for doing this and for allowing us to have this in our collection. And we dedicate it to her life, to you, the wonderful artist and community soul person that you are. So it'll be here as long as I have anything to say about it. It'll be a little while. And I'd like to invite everyone to join us in celebrating Lil Greenwood's birthday with cupcake and some refreshments. And thanks to Paula for organizing this and Catherine, our floral designer for the day. And thank you all for gathering.
Thank you.